Welcome back to Tide Pod on the YouTube home of Tide Illustrated. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalis. Another show, not a preview as per usual, because no game for Alabama this week. Alabama is waiting to find out its fate in the college football playoff, which we will talk about later on. But we wanted to shift our focus, as did the team, as they did for the first couple of days here in December, on recruiting. Of course, National Signing Day was at the time you're listening to this 2 days ago, but for us, we're recording this on Thursday. So National Signing Day was Wednesday, December 4th. Always a chaotic time, and moved up time, of course, with the schedule kind of getting reshuffled for the 2025 cycle. It obviously used to be later on in December. Now they're getting all this out of the way before the bowl season, which, you probably like, I would think, if you're a coach. Maybe you don't have to worry about two fronts as much. But Alabama had a very successful National Signing Day. They signed 21 players, finished with the number 4 class on National Signing Day, according to Rivals.com's team rankings. A good haul for the Crimson Tide. We're going to go through and do some superlatives for the class, Tony. But first, I just want to ask you off the top. We got to talk to Kalen DeBoer on Wednesday afternoon, and, the first chance to officially ask him about some of these guys. This is the first, of course, full signing class he's had as head coach. We're used to Nick Saban's, of course, recruiting class, and he's had quite the successful run under his time. DeBoer still gets a top 5 class himself. What did you make of just his comments about some of the guys and just how he summed up his first class as Alabama's head coach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he sounded pretty excited. I think most coaches sound excited at this point. You never have a coach that goes, "Oh man, our class sucked." Yeah, I did a terrible job recruiting. These kids are bad. We're gonna be bad for the next 4 years. You're never gonna get that. But he has a right to be excited. I mean, I think Alabama's obviously put together higher rated class in this one, but it's still a top 5 class. I think you've got a lot of really good pieces, and I think he met a lot of his needs. So I think he's rightfully excited about this one, and he kind of proved to people that he can recruit. I mean, when you hired DeBoer, the fear, I guess, from some Alabama fans was that Alabama was going to have this 20th ranked class, and there's going to be full of 3 stars. Well, that wasn't the case. I mean, they ended up with 3 5-stars and 14 4 stars. So I mean that's pretty good haul. Obviously they'll probably do some work in the portal too. Really, as fun as these the recruiting rankings and stuff are, I kind of like the combined rankings that Rivals does after the transfer portal, because I think that I know Alabama won that last year. I think that's always the most exciting for me, because that really shows you what you've done with transfers and recruiting. So we might get to what Alabama needs moving forward, but I think for the most part they answered their needs in this class, and they shouldn't have too much work to do in the portal. I think that you can afford to be a little bit choosy, and you're not just going to have to sign someone just for the sake of signing him. So credit to Kalen DeBoer for the work he did, and he's rightfully pretty pumped about this class.
Yeah, it's just like how there's never a bad visit, there's never a bad signee, there's never a bad class. This is the kind of fun, hopeful time where, all 21 of these guys are all future superstars, right? Of course, that's never how it ends up working out. You have some hits, you have some misses, but this is the time you get to be hopeful. This is the time you get to brag about, your work finding all these guys, and two, just obviously how good they are and how good they've been at the high school level. But I agree with you. I thought it was a very good haul for Kalen DeBoer. Of course, there was some late drama. They flipped Derek Meadows, a 4-star wide receiver, on signing day, to add to that a little, or to add to some drama a little bit. And obviously signed all the guys that had been committed, bar one, the offensive lineman Ty Haywood, who is kind of trending away from Alabama at this point. But to come away with all but one of your signees and add another one at the last minute, I think is a promising sign. And it was fun to hear DeBoer, I think, talk about those guys. You could tell he was excited, to brag a little bit about his signing class. So a good haul for Alabama. And like I said, we're going to kind of dive into some of these individuals a little bit in the form of superlatives. It would take quite a while to talk about all 21 of them. It is a good group, and you can read all about them over on Rivals and Tide Illustrated if you so choose. But we're going to do a couple superlatives, Tony. We're going to start with our MVPs on both sides of the ball, our offensive and defensive MVP. We'll start on offense. And I'll just kick things off with, I think, the only person that's probably right to kick things off with, and it is the most hype signing of all the guys. It's one of those 3 5-stars that you mentioned, Tony, that they brought in. It's the quarterback commit. It's always the quarterback commit. My offensive MVP is Keelan Russell, the 5-star quarterback out of Duncanville High School in Texas, currently going for, I believe, a third straight or second straight. I think it's just
I think
second
it's second
straight.
straight. Yeah.
Second straight state championship with the Panthers. I know you can give some context to that being a Texas football, high school football knower, but my goodness, over 3,500 yards passing. He has 52 touchdowns this season, has created quite the old takes exposed for some people who were very public about why is Alabama recruiting a 4-star SMU quarterback commit? Why aren't they going for the Julian Lewises, the Bryce Underwoods, the Trevin Sinclairs? Well, guess what? Keelan is ranked right amongst them now by the end of the cycle. He's the number 3 player in the class. And he's outstanding. The comp, I first heard this, I think, from Adam Gorney, the national recruiting director from Rivals, and I've heard it from a lot of people since. He plays a lot like Jaden Daniels, which is pretty exciting considering he's further along at this point in his career than Jaden Daniels was. He wasn't as high rated of a recruit as Keelan is. And, Alabama's got a deep quarterback room right now. You're going to see what happens next year with likely, you would think, Ty Simpson, kind of taking the reins. But from there, I mean, I think people are going to be pretty excited for when that kid gets his chance to play because he is a super, super explosive player, Tony. He worked with a 5-star receiver this year in Decorey and Moore. I love what this kid does on film. I'm enamored. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, and also, like, obviously Jaden Daniels is the guy that he gets compared to. And I've loved these clips that show like him next to Jaden Daniels. It looks like they're doing the exact same thing on the field. And that's really exciting to see. And he's going to be fun to watch. But also you just look at like what DeBoer has had with, like with the Michael Penix, and you look at the way that, Keelan can move around in the pocket and sling the ball. I think that, he can do a lot of those things too. You mentioned the 52 touchdowns. He also only has 2 interceptions. So this is a guy that's a good decision maker at a young age. He is just obviously a great athlete too. I think he has like 250 yards on the ground, but I've seen him make like a 70, 80-yard touchdown run before in the highlights. So he's a guy that can kind of do everything. I'm excited. I don't know if he'll play first year. I mean, obviously it looks like it's going to be Ty Simpson or maybe Dylan Lonergan or somebody like that, but or who knows? I mean, does Jalen come back? I don't think that's the case. Regardless, I think Alabama will have an experienced quarterback next year, but I wouldn't count out Keelan for making a push maybe year 2, or maybe even, if things don't go immediately well for whoever that goes behind center, he might make a push this first year. He's that talented and he's that exciting. So yeah, I agree. That's a good, strong offensive MVP. I'll be different though, and I will pick the guy that Alabama probably even needed more, because if you think about, you always want to have a good quarterback, and the quarterback's exciting, and I think Keelan Russell could win a Heisman, right? But like what Alabama really needed in this class was an offensive tackle, and they've got a nasty one in Michael Carroll, another IMG, going back to that IMG pipeline that's done Alabama so well. I think that, Kalen DeBoer called him nasty. I think that's a good term that you want to have for an offensive lineman. You want those guys that are going to be blue collar guys that are just going to maul people, and I think Michael Carroll can do that. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. He's got some nice size. You could maybe even put some more pounds on him, but I actually like him at 6'6", 315. I think he's a guy that, might play right away. I mean, they need someone to come and step in at that right tackle spot. We've seen Elijah Pritchett really struggle there. We've seen, can Wilkin Formby step up and do it? I don't know. But whether he comes in and takes that right tackle spot, or maybe he slots in at guard for Tyler Booker, I just like him to be a guy that, sees the field early. So I'm going to take the guy that's going to be protecting Keelan Russell his whole career or his whole college career. And I really like what Alabama got in Michael Carroll.
Yeah, 6'6", 315 is just a freak of an athlete. This is a kid, he was a Penn State legacy, is from Pennsylvania originally, went to IMG. I mean, you saw what Alabama's was able to do with J.C. Latham and Tyler Booker from there recently, and Carroll is on that same track without a doubt. And yeah, if he can slot into that right tackle position, I mean, you saw Caden Proctor do it as a true freshman. Carroll is at that level. At the same point in his career. So it's gonna be exciting. And yeah, certainly Keelan Russell. I mean, I give a quick shout out to the entire offensive line class. I know Keelan Russell's a happy guy if these are going to be the guys that are blocking for him. They got Mal Waldrop, an in-state kid who's great. Micah DeBoer is their other in-state guard who's great. And then Jackson Lloyd, a three-sport kind of standout from California. So
another Rivals 100 kid in Jackson Lloyd too. I mean, this is no slouch either. He's a guy that could maybe come in, and if he does well, could see some early playing time as well. I mean, he's a very serious prospect. So to get Lloyd and Carroll in the same class is pretty big for Alabama.
An elite haul. Let's do our defensive MVPs now, Tony. And we went a little more nuanced with this one. Alabama's got some really good defensive commits. Obviously, a quick shout out, of course, another 5-star. We've now talked about 2 of them. The third one, of course, being Dijon Lee. This is a young cornerback room that he's going to come in and be a part of that, and I think really push. You saw what Xavier Brown is able to do. So I'm excited for him without a doubt. That said, I'm going to give my defensive MVP to a guy who I think will be wearing the green dot for Alabama in a couple of years, and it is linebacker Luke Metz out of Georgia. He's the second longest tenured commit in this class. He committed back in March. Alabama warded off pushes from Georgia, Florida State. I think Oregon was in there, Oklahoma, some others, to land this kid. And, it's been really interesting following his commitment. He's already been working with Chuck Morrell, who's a defensive analyst for Alabama, kind of learning the playbook. They see him as potentially that Deontay Lawson type middle linebacker. I've talked with Metz. He kind of said, watching him, he's like, yeah, I noticed the same things he does at Alabama I do with my high school. Plays for Mill Creek, kind of a powerhouse program over there in Georgia. So he's my defensive MVP. He was a really vocal member of the class, was actually a guy who really helped get Dijon Lee on board. The two of them took an official visit to Georgia together, and actually Metz, said we looked at each other and flashed the lank, the L up, and he kind of felt after that he was going to go to Alabama with Metz. So been a big contributor for this class. I think the kid's going to be a stud if he kind of stays on the right path. Had a bunch of tackles, played offense as well at Mill Creek. They threw him in at tight end. So, when you got a guy like that, you might as well use him as much as you can. So I've got Luke Metz. I think he's going to be a beast at that middle linebacker spot in the future.
I'm going again with need here, and a player that Alabama needed at a position they needed, and I'm going to go with Justin Hill, who's going to play that Wolf spot. And you look at what Alabama is losing at the Wolf position in Q Robinson, and they already kind of need more depth at that position currently. Obviously, they have Quay Russell, but you're going to need to build depth at that position. So that was a big spot for Alabama, and you look at some of the holes in this year's team too. Of just you need that edge rusher. So I like the addition of getting a guy like Justin Hill. He's a 4-star guy out of Ohio, played his high school ball 90 minutes away from Ohio State. So to flip him from Ohio State was huge. And I think he's going to be a guy that, maybe he's not the, elite 5-star player that, Carroll was, but, I think he's going to be a guy that is going to play early and be a real difference maker and really add something that Alabama hasn't had this season. Is just that pass rushing ability. I think he's a guy that can really do a lot. You look at what Kalen DeBoer talked about him, just his explosiveness, his playmaking ability. And I think he's a guy that a huge get for Alabama. When you look at, it's not just about getting these in-state kids. If you're able to go into Ohio and take one of their guys right from underneath their nose, that shows you what this recruiting class can do, or what this recruiting staff can do. And so I think that's going to be a big addition, and somebody that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, but is going to be a huge player for Alabama in the future.
Christian Robinson is continuing to cement his value as a recruiter. All the credit should go to him for this. He absolutely sold the position to Justin Hill, and that was why Alabama was able to win the race for his services. He's done well with these guys he identifies as Wolf targets. They have 2 commits in 2027. I realize that's a long way off. Both guys recruited by Robinson kind of slated to play that spot, if they hold their commitments for that long. But yeah, he's done a really, really good job identifying guys. He did the same thing with Dawson Merritt, a 4-star linebacker who ended up flipping to Nebraska, but also, it was a battle between Alabama and Nebraska because of how much he liked that Wolf position and how much Robinson really made him understand it and kind of process that for him. And he's done the same thing with Justin Hill. I do agree. I think it's a big need, and we'll see how he he kind of grows into that role. This linebacker class is outstanding too for Alabama. You've got Metz Hill, Abdul Sanders from Mater Dei, Duke Johnson, who is a freak of an athlete, also from Georgia. You got all those guys. They're going to be loaded. And you saw what good linebackers can do this year with guys like Lawson and Campbell. So I'm excited for all of those guys. Good shout with Justin Hill. We've got the known names, right? A good amount of them in the way. Let's do a sleeper signing, Tony. I'll let you go first with this one. Who's maybe your sleeper signing in this 2025
I'm gonna,
class?
I've had a whole year to learn how to say this name, but I'm gonna go with Steve Mbumwa. I think I'm saying that Mbumwa. I think he's a really underrated prospect. I'm supposed to be a member of last year's class, a defensive lineman from Quebec. And he had some problems with credits transferring over, so he had to spend a year in the Southwest Mississippi Community College. That Mississippi JUCO, I covered that right out of school. My first, kind of first job professionally, and I got to see firsthand how competitive that league is. So him spending a year there, I think, is a good transition to get into SEC play. Obviously, it's not SEC play, it's not Division I play, but there's a lot of talent that comes to that Mississippi JUCO realm. And I think, he's a kid that, might have made a little bit of a difference this year, or at least would have, was a talented player. And that development in Mississippi, kind of getting used to everything. I'm sure there's a little bit of a culture shock coming from Quebec. I mean, he's a kid that spoke I think he speaks a lot of French too. So, I mean, it's got to be going from that to a small Mississippi town to Tuscaloosa. I mean, like, at least he'll be used to the South. But I think he's a guy, he's not just going to be your average incoming guy, because he played a year of college football. So with the help that Alabama needs on the defensive front, he's going to be key. I know they missed on some other defensive targets up front, but I think Steve M is what we'll call him. And I think he's part of the rotation. Yeah.
There's a really iconic photo of him on a visit with Freddie Roach, Alabama's defensive line coach. And Freddie Roach said this to us once. He was like, if they're bigger than me, I want them. And Steve is he looks like a clone of Freddie Roach. It's very funny. And, he definitely fits the bill. This was a 4-star recruit last year. He would have come in and been a good, developmental piece if he was here last year. Like Tony said, kind of went to take a year and just get, sort of develop, get used to America, for heaven's sake. I mean, there's some culture shock stuff there. And yeah, he succeeded. 46 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries as well at Southwest Mississippi.
And once again, this is big football. He's playing against people that will be going to other SEC schools. And is this not, I think Tony Mitchell went to, to East Mississippi Community College. I mean, Alabama's got people like Jerron Reed out of this league. They've gotten DJ Petway out of this league. So Alabama fans should be pretty familiar with Mississippi JUCO football. And so this is a good brand. And I think that he's going to benefit from playing over there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, he's got the stats to back it up too. So we'll see how well Steve does. Just to add on to, I think defensive tackle, I think there were a lot of people who weren't overly satisfied with, the amount of guys Alabama landed on that defensive line. That is clearly going to be, I think, a priority for the portal this window in terms of filling some of those needs heading into next year. But in terms of long-term development, I think they've got, some good guys. London Simmons from Mississippi as well, 3-star, who they really, really like. Alabama was his first Power 4 offer. So, there's some good upside players there. My sleeper, though, I'm going to a skill position, and it's a record breaker coming into Alabama from the state of New Jersey. I'm going with Latsier Brooks, one of 2 wide receivers for a while until the final hours of early signing day. Looked like they might only get him as their wide receiver until they flipped Meadows. But this kid is really, really, really good. There was some questions about the kind of competition level he was playing over there in New Jersey. And I liked what DeBoer said was, if you get over 4,000 career receiving yards and you have the state record for career receiving yards and touchdowns in your state, I don't care who you're playing against, you're talented. And he has both of those. He holds New Jersey career records for yards and touchdowns. Super fast, played defense as well on his team over in Millville, New Jersey. Just kind of a speedster, yards after catch guy, beats people with pace. I think he is a really, really high upside guy in the future for this receiver room.
Alabama's done well with the state of New Jersey. You've
Mm-hmm.
got Minka Fitzpatrick from New Jersey. You've got Anthony Averett from New Jersey. You're going to go to the basketball side of things. You've got Javon Quinterly from New Jersey. So, like the state of New Jersey has produced some top end talent for Alabama in the past. So, it's not necessarily known for its stars, but definitely. Hey, shoot,
Yeah.
we're in Estrada too. I mean, not like they really go that, like even more. Yeah. So
New Jersey to somewhere else to Tuscaloosa, all over the place for him. But yeah, I really like Latsier Brooks. He really stood out to me on film. Is a kid too who you look at recruiting services and he's not as highly ranked on some of them. He didn't do kind of on purpose. He didn't care to do camps or really exposure events, which are, those are things that the more you do that as a player, the more you get evaluated, the higher you're probably going to be. He didn't do a lot of that stuff. So, kind of scouts who weren't with schools didn't really get to see him as much, but I really like him. I've watched a lot of his film. I think he is absolutely going to be someone who long-term, I think will be a target for probably Keelan Russell if things, kind of work out for both of them there. So I like Latsier Brooks, the record holder.
you've got sorry to cut you off. With Brooks and Meadows, you got like a 5'9" guy and a 6'6" guy, totally different receivers,
Very different builds. Yeah, they went for kind of small and speedy, big and physical. They have two kind of guys that they can embed there, of course, behind players like Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard for sure next year, and some others. So yeah, I like Latsier as my sleeper. Next one, a guy who you were thinking you might not have to wait too long to see this season. It's our most likely to succeed in year one as one of the team's signees. In my one for this category, I'm going back to the JUCO realm. Alabama's other JUCO commit, who is also along the defensive line. I'm going with Cavante Henry, a guy who was originally a member of the class of 2022, signed with Oklahoma, never ended up playing for the Sooners, and went over to California, Cerritos College in California. Last year, 20 tackles, 2 sacks, I believe had a fumble recovery as well. This is a JUCO that DeBoer has a lot of familiarity with. They knew about Henry. He's listed, according to Rivals, as the number 2 JUCO player in the country and is now going to head over, was originally committed to Mississippi State and flipped to Alabama, and is kind of slated to be at that bandit position, which is, I think, another area that Alabama is going to need to have some good depth for. I think he could compete for the 2 deep right away. He's got 2 years of college experience under his belt. So to me, I just think he's someone who's developed already in this class. Clearly, DeBoer likes him. He kind of went as a recruit they went back to, and has some solid stats. I know California JUCO isn't Mississippi JUCO. I completely agree with Mississippi's kind of built different in that regard, but this is a kid who they really like, and I think he can compete to be a good depth piece at that bandit spot next year. Another position that requires a lot for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, so they have him playing at bandit.
I think so. I think that's where a lot of people see him. Maybe could slide in.
I was gonna say he's probably got the build right now to play Wolf if that's what you wanted him to do. He's probably we talked about Justin Hill, right? He's kind of like the same size-ish, right? I think so. If he's gonna play, if Cavante's gonna play bandit, I think maybe probably has to put on like 15 pounds. I mean, that's doable, but I'm just saying I think it'd be interesting to see what he would be like if he did put the 15 pounds on him. He's got some power. So that could be an interesting, I guess, transformation too, heading it, over the summer and getting him on campus. When you get to those JUCO guys, I mean, like they come in, you don't usually take a JUCO guy unless you're pretty sure that he's going to make an instant impact. So I think it's pretty safe to say that, Cavante is somebody that, Alabama wouldn't waste their time on a kid, a JUCO kid, if they didn't think that he was going to come in and really do something. So I like you there. I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to go with Alex Esperuoff. He's definitely going to make a big impact because he's going to be the projected successor to James Burnap at the punter position. I know that's kind of I'm cheating because that's kind of like what you have to do with punter. You don't bring in a punter usually to sit on the bench, but this is a guy that ranked as the number 3 punter in this year's class according to Cole's Kicking, and it's between them and Chris Saylor. I know they rival over who has the best kicking perspective program or whatever, but obviously he's somebody that's viewed as a serious prospect, and When it gets down to punting, obviously Alabama needs to see you do it and kind of prove yourself, at camp. And Alex is somebody that went and did that for Alabama. They liked what they saw in him. He's a guy from California, so no more international. No more international angles. You won't see any upside down tweets from me about him. If you've been following on Twitter, I won't do any of my Aussie antics. But he's a guy that, as DeBoer pointed out, his dad played in college. He's an athletic player. He's not just one of these punters that's just not athletic. So he's going to have big shoes to fill. Obviously, I don't think he's going to step in and be a raid guy, a semifinalist like James Burnham was. But I think that, as far as being an impact player his first year, he's probably going to be Alabama's punter if he handles his business. So I'll take him.
I like it. I love the punter talk on is the superlatives. One of 7 California players too. That was a big thing DeBoer, kind of talked about as well, was, as these in-state connections start to grow, he's going to tap into the pipelines that he established at his previous stops. And obviously coaching in Fresno, coaching at Washington on the West Coast. I mean, that's kind of paying dividends. You've got those 7 guys. The other guy, I mean, we didn't even talk about, Abdul Sanders and Chuck McDonald, 2 guys from Mater Dei. You're tapping into talk about IMG pipeline. I mean, that's a pipeline you want to keep going. Look at Xavier Brown, Bryce Young. I mean, they've got some good California connections, and Alex is a part of that group. I love it. Last one. Speaking of love, we're going to talk about fan love. A guy we think might be a fan favorite, whether it's immediate or long term. I'll let you take this one first again because it's a guy we already mentioned.
Yeah, so elephants don't forget, neither do Crimson Tide fans. And Luke Metz is a guy that really helped Alabama in the recruiting process. He was kind of you mentioned him with Dijon. Yeah, he's just a guy that was always there, recruiting. He never really wavered from his Alabama commitment. He's a guy that always talks to the media. He's well polished. He says the right things. He seems like you said, he's going to be like that green dot guy. He's going to be probably the leader of the defense at one point. Whether he's a talented kid, I don't know if he's going to be like necessarily as there's some, I guess, more athletically just like freak athletes in this class. But, Metz is somebody that's right up there with them. And he's just a guy that, he talks to the media. He's smart. Like he's a guy that the fans are just, I feel like, going to fall in love with. And they're going to remember just, kind of, he's like a true Bammer already. You know what I'm saying? He's already kind of, flashing the link sign, doing all the Alabama stuff from a non-Alabama native. It's kind of neat to see a guy like that, come in and be that, sold into the university. I think fans are going to remember that. They're going to embrace that. And so I think he'll be a fan favorite for sure.
His parents are Georgia fans. He grew up an Alabama fan. At least that is what he told me. Maybe he was just trying to be nice at the time of when he was still a recruit. But, nevertheless, it worked out for Alabama. 79 tackles, 6 sacks in his senior year, too. I don't think I mentioned that at the top. So, there's some production there to match. Yeah, I think he's a likable kid. And I think, if it works out for him on the field, the fans are going to feel that for sure. My fan favorite, I think, is a guy who ended up being the lone running back commit. Alabama, of course, had Anthony Rogers, who I was desperately hoping would kind of hold on to his commitment because I wanted him to be the final signee from who would have technically been Nick Saban's guy because he had committed to Alabama all the way back in June 2023, held on for over a year, didn't decommit, but ended up, of course, leaving. I believe he signed with Ohio State when it was all said and done. So they lost him, but they picked up a guy from the Magnolia State in Mississippi in a Kalen Deer, A.K. Deer. I'm looking forward to the puns about his last name with Deer. I've already seen some good gifs tweeted about him, and it will be.
Sorry to interrupt, but if he doesn't get a sponsorship with John Deere, nothing runs like a deer, and he's a running back. I mean, come on,
you go.
That's writing itself, Jack.
Free NIL money. It's like it's like Nick Pringle. I mean, it really is. It's really that easy. But I think he's going to be a fan favorite, not only because, he's Alabama's kind of future running back commit. This is the guy who, he's the number 4 running back in the class. Really, really talented kid out of Quitman, Mississippi. Over 1,000 yards in his last season. He was Dandy Dozen. He's going to play in the All-American Bowl. He'll play in the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. And, this is a guy I think he's about the right stuff. I was at his signing day ceremony, talked about kind of representing Quitman. Is a huge fan of Robert Gillespie, the running backs coach. Apparently can make some plays in the return game as well, per his coach. Played quarterback and corner at times too for Quitman when they needed him to step in, which, is wild. And I think he's just a kid who he just seems like he's about the right stuff. I think fans are going to like him. Alabama's had such a great history with running backs recently, and Deere kind of seems like he's pretty confident to step into that role. And I just think he's he's a pretty likable kid, pretty soft spoken, doesn't say too much, but is just all about the work, and I think appreciates his opportunity and is excited to kind of put Quitman on the map a little bit too. That's kind of a big thing. Like I said, he was the first player from his school named to the Dandy Dozen, the top players in Mississippi. So they love him down there. Basically the whole school was there to watch him sign. And, I think he's just got a neat story, and he should do some damage on the field too. Of course, the next level is very, very good running back.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's your superlatives. It's so hard. There's so many good names to talk about in this class, but I think that's a good way to kind of round it out. I mean, you can go read about them on Tide Illustrated. We wrote about pretty much every single one. There's 2 intriguing tight ends that we didn't even mention. Marshall Pritchett, Caleb Edwards. Shout out those guys. I think you said
best goggles, best glasses.
Yeah, best glasses award. He's a sport goggles guy. I really hope that continues. That's like the hot rod. Rodrigo Blankenship is, of course, from Georgia. He can kind of be in his element there. But yeah, we had plenty of recruiting coverage from yesterday, so go check all of that out. But there's some superlatives for you, Tony. And yeah, looking forward to see what these members of the class do. Obviously, we'll have plenty of transfer portal coverage as well when that all starts. But to finish this show, you're going to hear this on a Friday. You're going to hear this before all of the championship games happen, one of which, of course, has some implications for Alabama and its playoff chances. And, of course, the latest playoff rankings has Alabama in the playoff at number 11. And I think it's only right we end things with some quick playoff talk, because we'll have a pod after the final rankings come out where we'll find out if Alabama is in or not. But I think that's a good way to end things. And we'll do our predictions for the championship games as well. But Tony, give the people a rundown. What happened on Tuesday, and where do Alabama's playoff hopes lie with them not playing in a championship game? But, some of these games might affect if they make the playoff or not.
Yeah, I mean, look, what happened was Alabama was really helped out by the committee. They got that 11 spot, which, I know it's a 12-team playoff, but that 11 spot was the spot for safety, because whoever's coming in 12 is going to be bumped out by the Big 12 champion. So you really need to get to 11. The big news for Alabama is ahead of Miami, ahead of Ole Miss, ahead of South Carolina. And, you heard Ward Manuel, the committee chair, say that those teams that aren't playing aren't going to move. So what he meant by that was you're not going to see the committee just change its mind after this week and put a Miami over Alabama because it had different vibes, or, it's not like dependent, like, I guess per se, let's just use this as an example. If Georgia just got blown out by Texas, that's not going to affect Alabama's resume enough that it's going to drop Alabama below any of those teams. So that's, so Alabama's set at 11. You can make the argument that they're in actually regardless right now, but really what Alabama needs is for SMU to win the ACC championship and prevent Clemson from, quote unquote, stealing a spot. Now, there's a debate whether or not, Clemson would even steal a spot. Well, obviously Clemson would get an automatic bid, but there's some talk over whether Alabama at 9-3 would still be able to jump then 11-2 SMU. I personally don't see that. I think Alabama needs SMU to win that game, but there's a lot of noise. And if you look at the resume for Alabama, they'll have better wins than SMU. SMU doesn't have a lot of wins. So if you're SMU, you're kind of hoping that those 11 wins, the 2 more than Alabama and the 1 less loss at that point, if you do end up losing to Clemson, is enough to sway the voters. Me personally, and I know this is an Alabama pod, so I'm probably going to get flamed by our board for saying this, but I don't think Alabama should make it if SMU loses, because I just think that you're setting a bad precedent in college football. I think that, I wouldn't want to be in Alabama. I would be upset if I was an Alabama fan and they went 10-2 and didn't make it because they lost to, to Texas in the championship game. I don't think you should punish a team for playing in their conference championship game. That being said, I'm not on the committee. I'm not making that vote, and not every conference is equal, So I think maybe going to your conference championship game as an SEC team might guarantee you a spot. Like I don't see Georgia dropping at 10-3, but I think maybe it's not the same thing for the ACC, and I'm not sure. A lot of the same language they used for why Alabama was ahead of Miami could then be used for why Alabama is ahead of SMU. I don't know how that would go. If I'm an Alabama fan, I'm not feeling super great if SMU loses, but I'm also not feeling out of it. But the big thing is Alabama should, regardless, I think, be rooting for SMU. Either root for SMU to win or root for SMU to look just terrible and lose like 34-0 to Clemson, which I think you have a better shot of. I actually like SMU's chances of winning this game. I think they're a good team. They're not necessarily a name brand, but they've beaten everybody that, really everybody but one. And they lose a close one to, was it BYU?
Yep.
That's not the best loss, but you're still talking to a team that there's still a ranked loss, And I think when you look at, they're playing really well. They have big wins in their last 2 games. They've got a really mobile quarterback that I think could maybe be a Heisman candidate next year. That being said, director of player personnel, Bob Welton, joked that Alabama was going to loan Keelan Russell back to SMU to kind of help them play. Obviously you can't do that, but that was kind of a neat little joke from yesterday. I don't think they'll need it. I think SMU's got a great quarterback, and I think that I have them beating Clemson, but we'll have to see. That's kind of the playoff picture. I think it's real easy if SMU wins. It starts a lot of debate if SMU loses. It's kind of funny. Alabama's going to be really high on SMU, and then if they lose, they're going to be really low on SMU. You're going to see a total shift in Alabama fans and how they treat SMU once they lose or if they lose.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I won't leave you on an island there with that take about if SMU does in fact lose. I absolutely agree they should be in the playoff over Alabama. I agree you can't punish a team for going to its conference championship game because it was good enough to go to its conference championship game. That feels a little ridiculous. You make a very good point, though. I mean, it is very evident all conferences are not treated equally in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee. And so does that, create some interesting avenues? Absolutely. So yeah, I think you make it pretty crystal clear. It's pretty black and white. You're a big SMU fan. Pony up if you're Alabama. Pony Express. Indeed.
Originally, as a Texas native, I'd like two Texas teams to make it.
It would be a fun rebound for an SMU team that has quite literally been given the death penalty to go to the playoff.
I actually don't have any friends that went to SMU though, and I have friends that went to like TCU and Baylor who are kind of like I guess kind of rivals with them. So really, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be rooting for SMU, but I like it when the Texas teams do well. So I wouldn't mind seeing them do well, even outside of the Alabama implications. I always like to see my Texas teams do well.
Fair enough. Got to rep your home state. Well, I'll throw my team growing up under the bus. If you want a good example of a bad enough loss that can knock you out of some playoff contention, I turn your attention to the 2014 Big Ten championship game, 59-0. The Wisconsin Badgers, who I believe were number 4 at the time, and on that college football playoff bubble, blown out by Ohio State, and the committee said, maybe not so much. So, there's some precedent for you there. But I think that's a good segue because we are, of course, going to pick the games. I mean, come on now. We've been picking games all season long. If you missed last week's show, Tony is the winner. Tony, you moved up this week. You're up to 33 correct. I have 26 after last week's picks.
This is like the ACC SEC challenge. I'm the SEC. We're just piling on now.
In basketball, of course, Alabama rolling to a win over North Carolina in that great game as well. There's good recaps of it on Tide Illustrated. You should go read them. We'll get more into basketball too on the pod as we graduate out of football season. But a quick recap of last week, Tony. You won 4-3 overall. We both got South Carolina over Clemson. Big win for the Gamecocks to get them yelling about the college football playoff a little bit. Texas I'll go my 2 heartthrobs, Texas A&M and Vanderbilt against Tennessee and Texas respectively. Both lost. The Aggies and Vols rolled to wins there. Vanderbilt too. had a great game. Couldn't even manage to cover. It was Tennessee by 10.5. They won by 13. Very disappointing that Vandy couldn't at least backdoor that one. Miami, Syracuse, great calls by us. We preyed on Miami's downfall. The Qs we both picked the Qs. They won that game. Notre Dame, USC, you were gunning for a Trojans upset. The Fighting Irish won. That was your lone blemish last week.
And they didn't cover, did they?
They did not. Notre Dame won that game, I believe, by 14.
Damn.
I remember right. And it was the Fighting Irish by 7.5. So this week, championship week, we are picking 5 of the 6 major championship games. That, no offense to Tulane and Army, I left that one out. I got the Black Knights though.
I'm picking the Green Wave. So
you got to, yeah. That's your other school there. But we will go with the championship that will determine the group of 5 representative in the college football playoff. Boise State with Heisman candidate Ashton Jeanty, 4-point favorites at home. They are playing this game on the Smurf turf. It is not at a neutral site. They are on the Smurf turf, so keep that in mind. They're at home against number 20 UNLV, the upstart running Rebels. They lost their quarterback to an NIL dispute and are now playing for a spot in the college football playoff at 10-2, coached by former Missouri head coach Barry Odom. Who do you have in this game?
So if UNLV wins, are they in the play?
They're in the playoff. They will be higher than Tulane because they are ranked above the Green Wave.
That is wild. I'm still taking Boise State. I can't even imagine a situation where UNLV. I'm struggling to imagine a situation where Boise State probably even gets a bye. But to me, that's less strange than UNLV making the playoff, which would just be an absolute joke. But I guess, yeah, I'll go with Boise State for the sanity of college football.
I'm going all in on the insanity of college football. Listen, my full introduction to proper SEC football was Barry Odom speaking on the Missouri Quad every Friday before every Tigers home game in the year of 2019. I've got a soft spot for my boy Barry Odom. I'm going to pick the UNLV Rebels. I will love it. Boise State is playing probably for a first round bye because of the next game that we're going to pick.
Imagine being a team that was left out of the playoffs and like knowing that UNLV made the playoffs and you didn't. Like that is so rough.
That would be heartbreaking. Knowing you have first round bye and you threw all of that away. I mean, can you imagine? But I do think Boise will probably win. But that said, I'm gonna lean with my heart instead of my head, which has cost me in this series, and I don't really care at this point. Our next game, another conference that will only be a 1-bid league. Number 15 Iowa State against number 16 Iowa State against number 15 Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. I believe this game is played in Vegas. I will check. The Sun Devils are favored by 2. Who do you have in this one?
I don't know enough about either team. I'm not gonna pretend like I do, but I loved my time in Arizona in the Final Four. And I fell in love with Tempe, Arizona. We had a few meals there. I think we drank some beer there. Loved it. Loved the scenery. Drove by their stadium. Give me the Sun Devils. For vibes only.
I'm actually right there with you. I am a fan of one particular Arizona player. Their running back Cam Scatabo is so much fun to watch. Has 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns this year. I'm going with the Sun Devils as well. I think it's kind of funny that just to see them in the first iteration of the college football playoff as the Big 12 rep of all conferences too, as a newcomer to the conference.
If both of those predictions come true, you will have the Sun Devils getting a first round bye because they will be ahead of UNLV. So
this is true.
That'd be also ridiculous.
4-seeded Sun Devils. By the way, this is in Arlington, Texas at Jerry World, not Vegas. I was wrong, which is better. That's way more of a Big 12 stadium, so I'm glad it's there. But yeah, there you go. So I'll go with Arizona State. You are going to go with the Sun Devils as well. Next one, let's go over to Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium. Number 3 Penn State. Now in a situation, surprisingly, in the Big Ten championship, because, oh my goodness, Ryan Day is just a cursed man against the Michigan Wolverines. So Penn State gets a ticket to the Big Ten championship to play Oregon, the number 1 ranked Ducks, somehow staying unscathed record-wise through this chaotic season. They are 3.5-point favorites in Indy. Who do you like in the Big Ten championship?
You said that Oregon's ranked, right?
Oregon is ranked number 1.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And James Franklin's the head coach of Penn State still.
He sure is.
Yeah. Ducks. He's gonna roll the Ducks. That's a surefire 100%.
I am also with the Oregon Ducks. I am not a Penn State believer. Credit to James Franklin for navigating his way, to the playoff and not blowing it there. But yeah, I like Oregon. They produced some absolute sweet uniforms for this game as well. Go look them up. They got the green, gray, neon.
You
So
got
good.
the new age versus the old school, because I think Penn, as much as I'm kind of a Penn State hater, I'm actually more of a James Franklin hater. I actually kind of like the tradition and like the just like the look of Penn State. I love those uniforms, so I kind of have a special place. And I when I was in college, I got to cover the game with Paterno and Saban, and like that was kind of a neat experience. So a little bit of like I just think Penn State's a classic, cool program. But as much as I, am a hater of James Franklin, I love that uniform, and so I kind of I'm on Team Penn State here for the
unis.
uniform's sake. Yeah, I like the old school more than the new age.
That's very fair. I couldn't be further from the opposite. I love Oregon's threads. I'm also a massive Dan Lanning fan. I think he is a phenomenal head coach, and I like them here. All right, to Atlanta. The SEC championship game, which Alabama threw away its chances of being in after a loss to Oklahoma. So that means it's the number 5 Dogs of Georgia against the number 2 Texas Longhorns, who are 2.5-point favorites trying to win their first SEC title in their first season in the conference. Tony, do they do it?
Look, I should have picked Penn State to upset just to throw everything off, because I think there's a world where Penn State upsets Ohio State, Georgia upsets Texas, and somehow we get to eat Austin barbecue in a couple of weeks, and Alabama travels to Texas. I like worked it out in my head, and it's possible. That being said, because I've already ruined that chance, I do think Texas is going to beat Georgia. I think it's just hard to beat a team twice like that. I think the way that Georgia beat Texas is hard to replicate. I would love for Georgia to upset Texas and we get to go to Austin, because like I loved that trip. I love Austin. I'm a Texas kid, and I would just like that matchup. Also, you've got Jalen Milroe playing his former like childhood team, like against the matchup he never really got to have, because everyone thought it was going to be Texas versus Alabama last year, and like they both lost. I just would love to see that matchup. If that's not going to happen, though, like that's all fantasy, though. I do think Texas wins and takes the number 2 seed.
Who's that coming down the track, Tony?
It's the boys in
Mean Machine in the red and black.
Yeah, Mean Machine in the red and black. I knew
Give me the Bulldogs winning the SEC crown and preventing Texas and throwing a little bit of a wrench into the works for the college football playoff.
That would help Alabama's resume if we gets down to this like weird battle where they have to battle SMU or beating
very much.
So if
I don't know,
you're a fan, you probably root for Georgia to win this game, just because like you can't be too safe. I mean, that would help.
Maybe I have my Kirby Smart blinders on. I do not like Carson Beck, but I don't know. I just got something about Georgia and Atlanta against Texas, or against not Alabama, I guess. I like the Bulldogs here. Let's rock with Georgia. All right, the game you are all waiting for, Clemson SMU. Tony kind of alluded to his pick, so I will make mine first because I've got the one Bama fans are not going to like. I got Cade Klubnik and the Tigers in this one. I think Clemson's going to beat SMU. Fresh off that loss to South Carolina, I think Dabo's going to have them angry, and I think Clemson's going to win this game and might kick Alabama right on out of the college football playoff. I got Clemson.
Look, who has Clemson beaten? Are you going by brand, or are you going by what you've actually seen? Because like honestly, we can talk about this South Carolina team. I think the South Carolina team was hot, but like I think it's a beatable team, if we're going down to it. And I think the fact that they lost to that, like that was, I think an SMU team is actually, this is not going to sound great, but I think SMU is actually better than South Carolina. I don't think we give SMU enough credit. I mentioned Kevin Jennings, the quarterback, before. He's a sophomore. 2,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And he's also a guy that can, move the ball with his feet. I'm trying to pull up his rushing stats, but his rushing stats are pretty impressive as well. He's a mobile quarterback, can do a lot. I just like him. I like I like SMU right here, kind of knowing the opportunity that it's in. I think maybe we're going to start seeing a little bit more of SMU moving forward. I mean, they did move into, as long as we're still calling the Big 12 a power conference, which the ACC a power conference, which we can debate. To me, there really is only two power conferences, but as long as, that's the thing, I think SMU kind of is going to benefit from that. I think they're going to be making some more noise in the future. So I like Kevin Jennings. I like the Mustangs. They give me them, and I think that pulls out a close one, but I think they win.
I like it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of just going off of vibes. I just weirdly think something's gonna happen. Maybe it is just the brands getting to me. I'm blinded. Something about Dabo. I don't know. I like Cade Klubnik too. He's a good quarterback. But I'm gonna go with Clemson. Be a little bit different. But obviously, if you're an Alabama fan, you're rooting heavily against me. And as a reporter, I would like to cover the college football playoffs. So maybe I'll lean more SMU. But I'm gonna pick Clemson as my prediction anyway. That'll do it. Enjoy championship week. We will be back. We're going to do a show after the college football playoff rankings come out, and it'll be the moment where Alabama will find out its destiny. Is it going to the Citrus Bowl, or does it have a favorable path maybe to the semifinals? We'll see. We'll find out Sunday. Enjoy the weekend of college football. This is what it all culminates for. So should be a fun one. And we'll talk transfer portal next week as well. Enjoy the weekend of games. We'll see you next time.